We are back with California Democrat Brad Sherman here to talk about the history unfolding on the floor this week. Congressman, what's it been like to witness this? Is it a good thing that Americans can see the process playing out and they're paying attention?
It's always good for people to be paying attention. It's always good for people to see, but what they're seeing is a kind of an ugly picture. But not as important as what will follow after this is all over. I mean, Democrats are learning the word Schadenfreude. Some of us can even spell it. It is, the best thing would be to be in the majority. The second best thing is to watch this total disarray of the Republicans. But what matters is not, is it Kevin, is it Steve, is it this, how many votes? What's going to happen to the American people this year? Are we going to shut down the government? Are we going to default on our debt? Those are the two things that the crazies can create, and we've got to stop them.
Why do you say that? I mean, what is it that they are asking for that you think would lead to what you're talking about?
What the specifics they're asking for, I mean, the idea of vacating the chair with one person raising the vote, that's a gift to Democrats. Because if there's a vote on vacating the chair, and it's just one person, well, that's just one person delaying the body. But if it's 20 or 30 or 50 of them, well, then Kevin's going to lose his speakership if we don't, if Democrats vote to vacate the chair.
And do you think, and you would?
Not necessarily. I think by tradition, we are going to vote for our nominee for speaker again and again and again. There could be a departure from that, but it's unlikely. But a vote to vacate the chair, there's no particular tradition on that. Sometimes you vote this way, sometimes you vote that way. And I look forward to Kevin asking for my vote on something like that. And if the crazies want to put Kevin in that position, or Scalise or whoever it is, anything that empowers Democrats is a good idea.
There have been talks this week that Republicans, whether it's Kevin McCarthy or others, have been reaching across the aisle to Democrats to strike some sort of deal on this speaker vote. Are those negotiations, are those conversations happening?
Banter is happening. The thing is, in the old days, there used to be an overlap between Democrats and Republicans. The most liberal Republican was more, overlapped with the most conservative. That's gone. These are two very separate bodies. And if the people are saying, well, why don't we just, why doesn't Kevin just reach out to some conservative Democrats and pick up 5 or 6 votes? Once he picks up 5 or 6 Democratic votes, he loses 10 or 20 Republican votes. So if he wants to cut a deal, he can't try to pick up 5 or 10 of us. And we're so united, he can't pick off 5 or 10 of us. He's got to cut a deal with leadership. But what I hope happens, and I don't think this is a Kevin McCarthy that's cut a deal with Democrats, rather than a Kevin McCarthy who has cut a deal with the craziest members. Because what matters here is not party power. What matters here is policy. And if he puts the crazies in a position to stop him or to not allow Congress to vote on increasing the debt limit, we could put the world into a major recession just because of the craziness going on the floor. Right now, it's just entertaining.
Is it fair to call them crazy?
It's it's shorthand. They are taking positions that are extreme in terms of public policy. Now, how many of them should sit on the Rules Committee and how many of them should be on the Republican Steering Committee? Boy, I don't care. But what matters is, are they going to say, we're going to play a game of chicken on whether the United States defaults on the debt with the goal of forcing diminutions in Social Security benefits? Crazy is a polite term for risking the economy of the United States in an effort to destroy Social Security or undermine it.
One of the concessions that they're looking for is open rule on bills that come to the floor, budget bills. They want to be able to offer amendments. Is that a good idea? Would you appreciate that?
That's fine, especially if it's put in a position where any member, not just a Republican member, can bring up, I've always liked open rules, especially when I'm in the minority. So, but ultimately, Look, the Republican majority is going to do 40 hearings on Hunter Biden's laptop. They're going to do 40 crazy messaging bills that Chuck Schumer is going to throw away. All of that's going to drive C-SPAN ratings. No, you don't have ratings. But what matters is, can we just get through this year? We need to pass an agricultural bill. We need a couple of bills. And the key things is, don't shut down the government, don't dishonor the dead, and don't put us in a position where you're trying to force Democrats to accept cuts in Social Security.
Robert Costa of CBS News reporting this, a quote from Kevin McCarthy entering the Capitol today. "We're going to make progress. We're going to shock you." When asked about whether the framework of the deal the leadership presents at 10:15 will be enough to end the impasse, and when pressed on whether he can get there today, he promises progress.
They're 20, the 20 anti-McCarthy plus one Victoria's a present vote, have been very solid, 11 votes. Kevin thinks he can pick off half of those. And if he can, that puts a lot more pressure on the remaining. What's interesting is Donald Trump has no power. My God, he couldn't deliver one vote to Kevin McCarthy. I mean, any Democrat could deliver one vote to Kevin McCarthy. We're not going to do it. But he couldn't deliver one. He's got power. He's being criticized on the floor of the House by Republicans. Hopefully we've seen the end of Donald Trump.
Let's go to Christopher, who's in California, Democratic caller. Is it Novato, California? Novato. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
You're up early.
Yes, I am. Well, I think the host got it right. First of all, your tone and your adjectives, your personal attacks to the people that are upending Congress right now is not right. You shouldn't say that on live television. You should say that for the closed-door sessions when it's just you and the other representatives. Second, I think you got it all wrong. Democrats have the power right now. You said you need 20 or 30 people. You guys could be extending the olive branch to someone that's being attacked by their own party, and you could set a precedent for the country right now that we can't be bipartisan. I mean, if Democrats really think that they're going to get the House speakership, it's just not going to happen. Not right now.
Congressman?
And third,
we're not going to get a Democrat elected speaker, nor have we really floated that as a likely outcome. I have been leaning forward on the idea of what Kevin McCarthy could propose to our leadership that would be useful for the country, and those are two things. First, allow the Democratic leader to bring to the floor when necessary a bill to raise the debt limit, a clean bill, nothing else in it. If such a bill were brought and it were really necessary, it would pass the House. The problem we have is if McCarthy sells he puts himself in a position where either for his own desire or the desire of the most extreme in his caucus, he refuses to bring up a clean debt limit bill. We've got a problem. The second thing we have to vest in the Democratic leaders the right to bring up a clean continuing resolution. So when we get to October 1st or September 30th, if we don't have the appropriations bills, we don't shut down the government. Right now, the Republicans have those two strangleholds on America. They can block a debt limit increase. They can shut down the government on October 1st. And by God, if the Republican majority in the House can do it, there are some in that Republican majority who want to do it. Sometimes Kevin, sometimes not.
Another call from California. Ron is a Republican. San Clemente, go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much, Greta, for taking the call, and Congressman Brad Sherman, one of the brighter people in the Congress. Always a great pleasure to ask you a few important questions. Kevin McCarthy is flawed goods to begin with, and tainted goods secondarily. So the question we have here is, if you go to an open rule where everybody can add earmarks, they can add, questions about additional amendments to something. It's going to clog the system up so badly that absolutely nothing gets done. Senator Hayakawa, years and years ago, used to fall asleep in the Senate because he said it was too boring, because that's what would happen constantly. So my question to you is, it may be a net benefit for the Democrats to have an open rule, but isn't it a net deficit for the Republicans?
I think that it certainly weakens the Speaker and the Republican leadership to have an open rule, and it's even better, of course, if it's open, and should be, to both Democrats and Republicans. And so it empowers individual members, and it makes for longer sessions. As to gumming up the system, there are very few things that are good that Congress is going to do in the next year. We will hopefully, as I keep going back to, not raise the debt limit where we need to and keep the government open. Other than that, there are just a couple of bills. And then there's a whole list of bad things the House of Representatives might do. And if we're too busy to do them, that's a net plus.
Dan, in Eagle Point, Oregon, independent.
Yes. Good morning. I had a comment. I think this is a healthy exercise in the American system of government. This is the way the founders designed it. It wasn't necessarily about unity. It wasn't about going along to get along. It was to protect the people. We needed a real spirited debate in order to hammer out these issues and not just go along with the status quo. So I think it's a very, very healthy thing going on right now, even though it seems chaotic, but really that's the way the American system is set up.
Let's get a response to that. Congressman?
Well, I'd rather have a healthy debate on what should be the transportation policy, a healthy debate on what should be the tax policy, a healthy debate on whether Donald Trump should be nominated as Speaker of the House of Representatives. I think I'm all for healthy debates, and it is good to spend time where we're all in person listening rather than on C-SPAN back in our offices. What we're supposed to be debating this week is the Republican effort to strip out the IRS. And what we've seen is that the number of IRS employees per tax return that's filed has almost doubled. And the Democrats last year were able to pass a bill to return our staffing levels at the IRS to where it was under Ronald Reagan. So I tell my Republican colleagues, stand up for Ronald Reagan and support this. But you got to understand that every time a billionaire successfully cheats on his taxes, a member of the Freedom Caucus earns his wings, or pitchfork. So they're in favor of disempowering the IRS, preventing, and all the new auditors under this program are going to be auditing people with incomes of over $400,000. You look at the Donald Trump tax return, and you see example after example of tricks that are used. I'm the only Democratic CPA in Congress, and they're all there. And most of them many of them should be subject to audit. And the IRS assigned one auditor to Donald Trump's entire empire. The IRS needs to be adequately staffed. Ordinary people really can't cheat on their taxes. I don't think they would, but they get a W-2 form, they get their 1099s from their bank accounts, and that's it. Whereas people in a Donald Trump economic position, if they're not effectively audited, you end up with them paying no taxes.
This is supposed to be the next business, the first piece of legislation.
Absolutely.
Is this dealing with these 87,000 new tax agents.
Well, and a lot of them are devoted to service. I remember, I'm an old CPA, I remember when you could call the 800 number and somebody would answer. We need to return to that. We need to put the service back into the Internal Revenue Service, and we need the staffing levels per tax return to be back to one employee for every 2,000 returns.
So what has been what have been some of the rumors about these new tax agents that you want to clarify?
Well, the idea that they'll be armed is absurd. There are a very few Internal Revenue Service folks that are armed. There are little police forces in so many of our federal agencies, but that's 8 out of 87,000. Second, a lot of this is not an increase, it's to replace people that are retiring. I think a huge percentage of IRS employees are retiring over the next 10 years. But the big thing is you're not going to see additional audits of wage-earning Americans. You're going to see additional audits of those with complicated structures. And that's what annoys the Republicans, because they think they're almost rooting for the tax cheat. They want to disempower the federal government. They're rooting against the IRS. They want to defund the IRS. And if you defund the IRS, you don't have any money to avoid defunding the police. So but one goes with the other.
Catherine's a Democratic caller in Burlington, New Jersey. Hi, Catherine.
Yes, Greta. This is Catherine from Burlington, and Representative Sherman. I'd like to ask you, at what point would the Democrats consider helping the Republicans get across this stalemate that they have here so we can get on with the business of doing our work? And Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year. First, it would require Kevin indicating that he'd like to talk. And if that became public, that would cost him support in the Republican caucus. So if that ever became public, he'd be betting his chances on being able to cut a deal. Second, instead of empowering the most extreme right wing, the folks that are so far to the right they won't even follow Donald Trump, they're Trumpier than Donald. It would need to be concessions. The traditional concessions you look for are how many Democrats versus how many Republicans are on each committee, the committee ratios, and staffing, because if we just follow tradition, the Democratic committee staffs will only be half as large as those of the Republicans. Well, heck, we're 48% of the Congress. Maybe we should be 45% of the staff on each committee. But the big things are this: the right to bring a bill to the floor. And usually that's vested in the Rules Committee, which the majority party completely controls. But there are certain bills and certain actions that can be brought up by certain members of the minority or other. And the key thing is a clean debt limit increase, a clean continuing resolution. Those powers need to be in Hakeem Jeffries' hands. So we can't begin negotiations with a guy who's made it very plain that he doesn't want to negotiate. But ultimately, while Schadenfreude watching the other side in disarray is frankly great politics for us. And there is a certain hidden joy, maybe not so hidden joy. But as much as we like to see the other party in disarray, what matters is what happens this year to the American people, and we've got to prevent defaults and shutdowns.
Mary's in Wisconsin, a Republican. Hi, Mary.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I just want, the Republicans have not been in charge of the representatives, the House. And in regards to the COVID vaccine, they had done a study in the European League for the athletes. Mm-hmm. And before the vaccine, there were 29 heart attacks in athletes. After the vaccine was instituted, 1,500 have had heart attacks, and 2/3 of them have died. And if you guys were in charge, you should probably pursue the idea that it's not misinformation and that the vaccine has affected people's lives. And that's a little bit more important than going into a recession, which you said probably would happen if the Republicans continue on discussing what they want to do for their future.
Okay, Mary. Congressman?
I'm certainly not aware of that study. I strongly recommend the vaccines. We lost 1 million Americans to this disease. We would have lost double, triple, and we'd still be losing at a very high rate if it wasn't for the vaccines. And even if you reach herd immunity without a vaccine, this virus mutates. And if we don't have effective vaccines and updated vaccines, this COVID is going to be killing lots of Americans for a lot of years.
Barbara's in Kansas, Democratic caller.
Yes. I want to say I am a Democrat, but I think we need both parties. And I, support Liz Cheney. I think we're missing the boat. I think she would get enough Democrats to follow her to get a consensus.
I would like to have Liz Cheney as Speaker as compared to any other reasonable alternative at this time. I do not know a single Republican member of the House, and I guess none of us are actually members. We're all members-elect.
Right.
I don't know anybody with a green pin who's a Republican who would vote for Liz Cheney.
So the pin is new.
Yes.
And that is the pin that you will wear even after you're sworn in, correct?
The same pin, and you're allowed to wear pins from prior Congresses as well. They all work for security purposes. I own more pins than suits, so I just leave a pin on every suit.
And that brings up a good point. You have been serving for many years in the U.S. Congress. One of the concessions that these 20 Republicans are looking for is term limits. I assume you are opposed to term limits?
We have term limits. It's a 2-year term. Then you go to the voters of the 32nd Congressional District. They know I've been there a long time. Some of them think that's a good thing. Some think it's a bad thing. If the 32nd District wants to elect me, who in the hell are these guys from other states to tell the 32nd District who they're going to vote for? But that's the kind of, we're going to have 40 messaging bills passed this year, such we might pass that one. That's an example, actually, of how their the 20 Republicans are kind of helping Democrats. We'll have a vote on a constitutional amendment to institute term limits. I don't think it gets 2/3 in the House. Maybe, whatever it is, it goes over the Senate. Chuck Schumer's got a big enough budget over there where he has a shredding machine, a really good one, and there it goes in. So we'll have messaging bills like that. But that may be a bill that's hard for some Republicans to vote on, especially if they've served more than 3 terms. So what McCarthy's doing is not diminishing heartburn for Democrats. He's diminishing, if he prevents a vote on that bill, he's diminishing heartburn for Republicans. So yes, indeed, bring up bills that split the Republican caucus and cause some of them to vote this way and some to vote that way, and many of them to feel a dilemma. Oh my God, if I vote this way, I'm going to look bad in the general election. If I vote that way, I'm going to look bad in the primary. And bills that are that far over on the spectrum are very easy for Democrats. Term limits is a little different, but on so many of these bills, bring up a bill that reduces Social Security. I'll vote against it, and a few of them are going to have heartburn as to what to do. I'm not going to have any heartburn. I don't need my staff to write me a memo that I don't want to cut Social Security.
We're talking with Congressman Brad Sherman, first elected in 1996. We'll go to Jeff next, who's in Kansas City, Missouri, Republican.
Yes. Hi. Good morning.
Morning.
One thing that really was standing out with, some folks being upset about the amount of rounds, the 12 and unprecedented. And, we're looking at the numbers and then these 20 folks that are pushing back. When I look at the numbers, I went back to 2000. Our debt was $5 trillion. Mm-hmm. At the end of this year, we're going to be at $33 trillion. You want to look at some numbers. These are numbers. I'm surprised there's not more than the 20 pushing back. 50% of our oil reserve has been drained. Food inflation is running sky high. I want to look at those numbers.
Yes, and we've got good numbers and bad numbers. Today's employment numbers were good. Those food prices are bad. We are refilling the strategic petroleum reserve now. That debt limit is certainly concerning. Efforts to prevent us from having an effective Internal Revenue Service and, in effect, make taxes almost voluntary for the billionaire class would obviously increase that deficit going forward from here forward. So those are the important issues we need to deal with. Much as a Democrat, it's always nice to see the Republicans in disarray.
Ray's in Napa, California, Democratic caller.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to talk. Yes, I'm here. Hello.
We're listening, Ray.
Yes, I'm right here. Hello.
Ray, you have to listen and talk. Please listen and talk through your
I'm
phone.
Right here. Hello.
All right. You got to, I'm going to move on. You've got to listen and talk through your phone. Mute your television, please. Christina in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania, independent.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm not a good speaker, so I have three things. One, I'm tired. I walked away from politics when the whole Trump crap started happening. But the name calling, it's very irritating for a lot of us. The crazies, the hijacking, the held hostage. I mean, it's so irritating to hear this. Those 20 people are actually representing, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are representing the people. And, you know, not all of us feel this way, but they're doing their job. And my third thing, I'm not familiar with all the roles and everything. How far is it going to go until McCarthy actually steps down and somebody else replaces him?
Okay, we'll take that, Christina. Congressman.
Well, the record is 133 votes. All of the records about dysfunction were set right before the Civil War. And people say we're more divided, more dysfunctional. You look back at the 1850s, and it was worse. Of course, that was followed by a civil war. I don't think they were I wouldn't draw too many analogies between now and then. As to how long this goes on, 133 votes is the record, and Kevin McCarthy's already said that he's broken the record for how long a speech he has been given on the floor of the House, and maybe he'll break this record too. Records are made to be broken. The thing is that if he steps aside, it's possible that the 20 who have voted against him will vote for Scalise just because, well, they've got a head to put on the wall. They haven't actually gotten anything substance they've wanted. Maybe Scalise is a little bit more to their liking, but they won't get the rules changes that they're pushing for. But they'll be able to say we won. And sometimes politicians, even if they haven't actually done anything to affect public policy, will bask in what they call a victory. I don't know if there's McCarthy makes the point that he's got more Republican support than anyone else, and that there's nobody else that can put together even 200 votes, let alone the 217, 218 that he needs. So I don't know when this ends. I'm frankly hoping that it ends with a speaker who's cut a deal with Democrats rather than a speaker who's cut a deal with the folks in Congress that I disagree with most. And so for me, this is not about how many messaging bills they pass, not about how many Hunter Biden hearings we have. It's all about the 2 points I keep coming back to. Do we shut down the government? Do we dishonor our debt? And if we can come out of this knowing that that isn't going to happen this year, Democrats will achieve a lot.
House Republicans are holding a conference call this morning around 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time to walk their members through this emerging deal that came about yesterday with the 20 defectors. We will learn more as the morning goes on. The House will reconvene at noon Eastern Time. You can watch live here, gavel to gavel coverage at noon Eastern Time here on C-SPAN on our website, cspan.org, or if you cannot be near a television, you don't have to miss a minute. You can download the free video mobile app, C-SPAN Now. Ron in New York, Democratic caller, you're next for the Congressman.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad to be on. These Republican nuts want Democrats to help them now that they need help, but they didn't want to help us when we needed help. When we were in control, they wanted to block everything. So the caller that called from California that said that they shouldn't be called nuts, you know, he needs to rethink that because they are nuts. They complain about immigrants, you know, like they're saying things like, oh, yeah, you know, we're going to build the wall. I mean, not build the wall. We're going to stop illegal immigration. Trump ran on building a wall and having Mexico pay for it for his entire presidency. And what happened? They had control of Congress, the presidency, and they couldn't get that done. They can't get anything done. They call the Democrats the do-nothing Democrats when they are actually the ones that do nothing, So they like to put a spin on everything. And Fox News, they sit there and watch that all day, and all they do is tell lies, spread misinformation, and they don't answer questions. When you ask them a question, they don't answer it. They deflect.
Okay.
And that's what they do. They deflect.
I'm going to jump in, Ron, so we can get a response from the congressman.
First, I want to point out that at 10 o'clock, Democrats are on the steps of the Capitol commemorating January 6th. And that's a day that will live in infamy. It's a day when there was an attempt to deprive America of democracy and to substitute mob rule and to prevent the peaceful transition to power. And it's a day that we need to remember. As to the caller's comments, people say they don't like do-nothing Republicans. I prefer do-nothing Republicans to most of the things they want to do. And I don't think Democrats are at all interested in helping Republicans, but we are interested in helping the American people.
And is there a piece of legislation like the infrastructure bill that you think Republicans and Democrats could agree on in the House over the next 2 years?
I think we'll pass an agriculture bill. I'm not an expert on agriculture. They tell me there may be a few improvements in our agricultural policy that, frankly, from an urban district, I wouldn't necessarily focus on. Our nutrition programs are in that bill too. But I would say that the policies adopted by last Congress, when you had a Democratic majority, kind of a Democratic majority in the Senate, are policies I'd rather keep in place rather than policies that Kevin McCarthy and Scalise and those to their right would adopt. So a do-nothing Republican Congress is like the best Republican Congress I can think of, but doing nothing means don't dishonor our debt, don't shut down the government, don't do those things.
Brad Sherman, thank you, as always, for the conversation.
Thank you.